Welcome back to the Neutral Zone. Today we're going to be continuing along with our 2024 college football preview series. Today we look at the 2024 Alabama Crimson Tide, the post-Nick Saban era. So as always, if you're new to the channel, please like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single upload. We're almost at 1,100 subscribers. So please, if you like this type of content, if you like talking college football, join our community. Our family's growing, tremendously over the past year or so doing these previews. So it's been really fun. But let's get right into it. Obviously, talking about where we had them last year. I guessed them correctly, 11-1, but I'm not going to give myself too much credit. I had them beating Texas, and I had them losing to Tennessee or
Georgia. No, they didn't play Georgia in the regular season.
No, I think it was Texas, Tennessee, or LSU.
Oh, okay,
one of those two. But I had them going 11-1 last year. You obviously had them more down last year, 9-3. But what is your takeaway from Alabama season last year?
Man, so rough start. If you guys remember, after the Texas game, they benched Jalen Milroe, looked very mediocre in that South Florida game, the game that you see they won 17-3, but then kind of picked it up. Obviously, the Auburn game was close, but that's a rivalry. They were able to beat Georgia in Georgia, and by Georgia, I mean the state. They were able to beat them in Atlanta for the SEC championship, and then took Michigan, the eventual national champion, to the fourth quarter, really, and overtime. Yeah. So this team is a team that, if you look at what my prediction was, I think overachieved a little bit. And that's tough to say for an Alabama team, but I thought they would be down a little bit going into last year. Just the amount of talent Alabama loses season in and season out. But Nick Saban just showed the mastery of him as a coach, as he was able to navigate this team to really what turned out to be 11-2, I think you say, with their loss in the playoffs. So a good season for Nick Saban to go out on, because I think that was one of his better coaching jobs. The fact that he was able to get this whole thing churning after they had some turmoil early in the season. Like I said, to be able to come back and win 10 games straight was mastery, and that's why Nick Saban goes down as probably one of the greatest coaches in college football.
Yeah, so Alabama comes into the season ranked number 5 by ESPN with a projected win-loss at 9-3. It's about a 14% chance to win the SEC. We're obviously going to talk about their schedule here in a second. I think talking about last year, obviously, final record being 12-2. A lot of the talk came from that Texas, obviously, game, and then the USF. It was a very close game. It was an ugly game. I think it was super rainy.
Yes.
They had a bunch of different quarterbacks playing that game, like 2-3 quarterbacks playing that game. It was ugly, obviously. Then they go back to Jalen Milroe. They were able to beat a good Ole Miss team at that point, and then kind of roll on to the SC title game into the playoffs. Like I said, I predicted them to be 11-1 last year. I thought they played a really good game against Michigan. Michigan was my national champion, so obviously nothing surprised me there about Michigan winning that game. That was a really good game. Those of you guys who watched that,
yeah.
But I do think this is going to be a far different team, obviously, heading into the next season. The biggest key piece, this is the first time we've done this under key losses. We have a head coach there. So Nick Saban, obviously, the greatest coach of all time. You lose Dallas Turner, which, went to my Minnesota Vikings, so I might like that. You lose J.C. Latham. He's one of the best offensive linemen in the SEC. Isaiah Bond goes to Texas. Both your starting corners leave. Caleb Downs goes to Ohio State. Trey Amos transfers. Malik Benson transfers. Roydell Williams transfers. Jermaine Burton leaves for the draft. So you lose a lot of productivity. Now you do bring in Domani Jackson. He was a former number 1 overall corner like 2 seasons ago from USC. He hasn't really panned out though. So he was between Alabama and USC when he's coming out of high school. So maybe this kind of, solidifies his trajectory as a football player now. You bring over 2 safeties from the Big Ten, which should help your loss of Trey Amos as well as Kool-Aid and Terrion Arnold. And then you bring over 2 guys from Washington. Obviously, Austin Mack is not Michael Penix, but he's a backup there. And then you bring in Parker Brailsford, who was a part of that, award-winning offensive line in Washington. And then obviously Jalen Milroe, and you bring back a couple of key pieces who were kind of secondary rotation type of guys in the offense besides Tyler Booker, but with Kendrick Law, Jam Miller, and Kobe Prentice. You had another obviously really good recruiting class, top 2, top 3 in college football. So I think Kalen DeBoer has his work cut out for him this season. I would be shocked if this team wasn't in the playoffs, but I would also say that there's a lot of teams I could see beating this team. And that's just because there's a lot of question marks. But what is kind of your takeaway? I think really the biggest thing for me on this screen is key losses. What is your takeaway?
Yeah, I think this is where we have to give credit and see that Alabama recruiting machine. So they lost a lot. And as you go down that list, you see a lot of their key productivity. One, I think you need Jalen Milroe to step up as a leader and really be a star on that offense. I think this is Jam Miller's opportunity to be a key back. So he's a guy that got carries last year, over 500 yards rushing, but I think you need him to really break out. Some of these receivers, 4 and 5 star guys, they just really haven't gotten the opportunity. You mentioned Kobe Prentice, Kendrick Law, Jalen Hale, Cole Adams. Now they get an opportunity to really break out. Again, 4 and 5 star guys, they were just playing behind some good players. My concern when you look at this is the secondary. You mentioned Keen Mack and Keon Sabb coming over. You mentioned Damani Jackson, but you're replacing, as you look at the loss list, 4 players out of your secondary. 3 of them probably your best secondary players. I think you got a first-round pick there. Caleb Downs, probably one of the best safeties in college football. Kool-Aid Mystery, I think, went early in the second round. And then you add Trey Amos to that. You're replacing basically your entire secondary. Part of that being with guys out of the transfer portal. That's always concerning. The chemistry, obviously the talent's there, right? And I think with Damani Jackson, a 5-star guy, the talent has always been there. But how does it pop with this new Alabama team? And then how does that chemistry work? You lose your best pass rusher in Dallas Turner. But again, the guys that they have replacing them are 5-star guys. It's just now is their opportunity to really pop. You got down there Ryan Williams, a 5-star wide receiver. He might pop. I think Alabama's going to be fine because I think Jalen Milroe is going to be a dynamic dual threat quarterback. And I think some of these guys are 5-star talent that we just don't know. They just haven't played a lot. And this is going to be their opportunity. Some of these guys are going to pop. Some of these guys are going to have an amazing season. They're great talents. They just were playing behind other great talents. And I think this is going to be their true opportunity to take advantage of now getting increased playing time.
I agree. Moving on to kind of look at their schedule, we have the same prediction, 11-1. I have their floor at 1 loss more. I do think they can lose to Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, and Oklahoma. I mean, even really the Auburn game, but I only put 1 more extra loss because I don't think they really are going to lose both of those. And they have Auburn at home, and I think being at home field advantage is going to help a lot. But I do have them going 11-1. I almost said 10-2 because I think the LSU game is going to be tough. I mean, we've kind of went over that narrative nonstop as we previewed SEC teams throughout this season and last season. The Death Valley is one of the toughest places to play, and I know LSU is going to be a little down this year, so I kind of favor Alabama a little bit. But that game I went back and forth with mightily because I think LSU is, that late in the season, they're going to be tough, especially if LSU is exceeding expectations at the point. That game could decide, in all reality, this could be a hot take, but that game could decide an entrant to this, the SEC title game. I would anticipate in years to come that game being a deciding factor. Obviously, we have, guys like Texas, Oklahoma now, Mizzou, but I think LSU is always going to be a player in the SEC. But I have them going 11-1. I think the Georgia game is going to be, one of the game for ages, this year. So hopefully it's a really good game. But I think 11-1 gets you in the playoffs. It gets you in the SEC title game. And we're talking about Alabama as not taking as big of a drop off as everybody thinks they're going to with all the mass exodus in the portal.
Yeah. So my concern as I was making their prediction was that Georgia game. And I say that because they're playing that game in Alabama. I think Alabama is going to be fired up. This is going to be, and no knock to Wisconsin, that's going to be an early test for them. I think they'll get past Wisconsin, even though that game's in Wisconsin. But that game is going to be so hyped. Obviously, these two teams have gone clashed as really the heavyweights in this conference in the SEC, which is obviously a major power in its own right. These guys have really clashed. And I think this is Alabama's opportunity to really cement themselves as, hey, we are not taking a step back with Nick Saban gone. This is Kalen DeBoer's opportunity to show that he is a big game coach. He is again, I'm not going to say fill in the shoes of Nick Saban, but hey, if Nick Saban's a size 13, he's a size 11. He can help fill that void of Nick Saban being gone. This is his opportunity in prime time. I'm sure that's going to be the game day game, and everybody, all eyes are going to be on that game. He has an opportunity to truly show, and this Alabama team as a whole has an opportunity to truly show that, hey, we're not taking a step back. We are not gone. The standard at Alabama is the standard, and that will maintain. So I think they're going to come out fired up. I think that crowd at Bryant-Denny is going to be loud and raucous. And you have a Georgia team that had a bunch of turnover as well. I just think Georgia with Kirby Smart and the continuality there is just in a little bit better of a position. I think this schedule kind of works for Alabama this year. They don't have to play Texas. They have a couple of key games at home. Again, as I mentioned, that Georgia game specifically. I think they catch a couple teams that are still kind of building. That LSU team, we talk about all that they've lost over the last year. Yes, Death Valley's a tough place to play, but by that point in time, both teams should have really kind of found their footing. And I think Alabama just probably has a little bit more talent than them, especially when you look at what all LSU lost this past season. So this season kind of sets up. I suspect that Alabama intends to prove that, hey, we're still Alabama. The standard is the standard here, and we should be deeply in that national championship conversation.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun to see how Kalen DeBoer kind of, like you said, fills the shoes of Nick Saban, because there's a lot of high expectations. What does he do if he loses a game early, or maybe even 2 games early? Like, what's the narrative around the program? We kind of see where Dabo Swinney's going, where they started off rough last year, and then there's immediate tension, and attention towards Clemson. So Alabama has not been in that position in, forever. So I kind of want to see how they handle that and handle adversity, because Alabama doesn't really seem to have adversity in any points, under the Nick Saban era. So I'm excited to see how that pans out. If you're an Alabama fan, let us know down below what your expectations are for the season. Are you guys SEC title favorites in your opinion? Are you national championship favorites? Do you feel like Jalen Murrow is going to win the Heisman? Let us know. And as always, if you made it this far, please do us a favor, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload. And like the video, comment your take down below. We will see you guys in the next preview. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.